I don't mind telling you, I'm a little bit overexcited. I am. I've missed this rapscallion, this ne'er-do-well. He is the hunk of hemp. Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Kane. This is Men's Radio, and this is one of my favorite shows. I can't believe it's week 45 after the summer hiatus. Week 45 of the ABC of CBD. Let me get you on to the reason why you all tune in. It certainly isn't for me. I'm just the passenger. Ollie Mammon. Good evening, all.
What's up, guys? I've missed you so much over the last 5 weeks. I took a little break, to be honest with you. Don't know why. I kind of love this so much. Don't know why I took a break from it, but I think I just needed a month off of life, which was kind of nice. Plus, it's been wedding season, and, you know, with the whole COVID backlog, I mean, I've had like 9 Thursday weddings. It's been insanity, and a couple of Tuesday weddings, which is actually kind of interesting. I've never been to a Tuesday wedding before. It's actually pretty
like
mental.
It's probably like a Thursday wedding, but 2 days earlier.
It's just mental.
Going out on a limb.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's basically what my life has been like the last few weeks. But thank you so much for having me back, and I'm really excited to start this brand new season.
Absolutely. And straight away up in Edinburgh, one of our most loyal listeners and viewers, Veronica Curran, says, missed you more. And I think she did. She really did. Anna Barbosa Lugo. One day, Anna, I will ask of you a favor. That day may never come. Welcome back. And Martin Bell. Hello, Martin. Good evening to you. How lovely. So there we are, the ABC of CBD week.
We're
45.
back.
Wow.
We're back.
Great stuff.
We're back. We're back. So I want to start by saying, should we just play the sponsor and then we can move straight on with the show? Should we do that? Let's play the sponsor and we'll move on straight with the show.
I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
Cool as hell. So cool it's straight from the freezer. Martin Bell is saying Shana Tova. Shania
Happy
Twain
New Year.
to you too, Martin.
Happy New Year, guys. Hope you had a good Chagim. So I just realized something quite funny. I never realized it before, but it's always like a little turn happens. So when we listen to that video and the doorbell goes, every time the doorbell goes, my head goes because I'm expecting my dog to start barking like crazy. But then I realize that he doesn't hear it. And it's one of those little things. It's like a little nuance, like every single time. And I never have the chance to mention this because you always discuss the light from the box.
Wait a minute, Cochise. Are you saying that your dog doesn't watch the show with headphones?
My dog does not watch the show. My dog doesn't watch anything. He just bees. He's just bees. Shall we start the show?
Well, be a good idea. We're here.
We've got a great guest waiting in the waiting room, so I might as well give her an awesome introduction. So our very special guest today is a lady by the name of Mary Biles. She's an author. She's a cannabis enthusiast. She's what I like to call an educational entertainer. So what she does is through educational content, she entertains people. That's what she does. She's a very good writer and she's an explorer of this space. Now, as we roll into this new season of the ABC of CBD, we'll continue to explore the world of CBD, cannabinoids, and all things hemp and cannabis related. The last 45 episodes have been absolutely incredible. We were joined by some fantastic warrior guests, as Russ said on so many occasions. Our guests included educated experts on personal crusades to change the social norms, the outdated, misinformed way in which we think. People like the Jamie Bartleys, the Chris Stubbs, the Taskers, the Coxwells, the Jappies, the Dr. Barnes, Barons, Carrillos, Moores, and Siemens. Parents who stopped at nothing to save their children, the Tony Montgomerys, the Deacons, the Greys, the Caddy Blackwells, the Matt Hughes. Individuals who went through wars to keep themselves alive, the Ed Grangers, the Sarah Godfreys, the Phil Monks, and then there are the affiliated advocates trying to help the system grow. and trying to do more for active users everywhere, generally keeping the system alive and generally keeping the system supplied. People like Zia Stone, Jamie Wood, Chris Macaluso, Ed Hambidge, Jamie Bartley again. And then you've got the GLO boys, Mr. Lyons and Mr. Frey. And you have George Botanicals, Mr. George Thomas. We had some incredible guests from different parts of this industry, everyone working kind of towards a common goal, but from different angles. Thanks to all of our guests. Thank you for everything you have done for the greater community. Thank you for coming on and sharing your stories and participating in the ABC of CBD.
I'll tell you what's weird. I was walking my dog earlier because it gets too late after the show, and because she's tired. And my daughter phoned, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm really excited. I've got Ollie Mammon back 6 o'clock with the ABC of CBD." So it's week 45, and there was a pause because she's got a huge podcast herself, and she said, "Week 45." I went, "Yeah." "And you're still talking about CBD?" I went, "Yeah." She said, "Haven't you said everything there is to say?" I said, "We haven't even touched the sides."
We haven't even started.
Haven't even touched the sides. 45 hours we've put in with the most extraordinary people I would never have met. I went all to Ollie Mammon. And we really, honestly, we this is, sort of never-ending story. There we go.
Never-ending story. I love that movie.
Oh, it was lovely, wasn't it? I interrupted. I'm sorry, but it is.
I've got the tune in my head.
I was once walking down the street. This is not a joke. I was walking down the street and I saw Lamal. And somebody I knew was crazy about Lamal. I got him to sing it down the phone to me.
If you like the 80s, remember Watch Stranger Things, great TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Really great TV show. They actually had a little homage to the Never-Ending Story at the end of season 3. It was kind of incredible. So all the guests who have come on, thank you so much for sharing your stories. You've really been amazing guests, and all of you have been through such tough, extremely testing journeys. And thank you so much for sharing them with us. We know that every time you share a story, it helps someone else out there. So thank you so much. So now I've got that done, we can move on with the show. I really want to say thank you to everyone from last year because you guys were incredible. And
interesting. We got and one of our new viewers is Sen Monroe. Be very, very careful. He's a former policeman.
Sup, Sen? How you doing? Check out my lab. Anyway, so basically, let's start. So this industry is relatively new, and especially in terms of commercial and medical application, which results in the industry being extremely difficult to navigate. Whether as a consumer or as a supplier, it's all very novel and it's all ever evolving. Most suppliers in this industry have been involved for about the same amount of time that most consumers and patients have been using. So there's not such a wealth of knowledge that exists out there that isn't really tried to be shared. And most people getting involved in this industry are new. In a lot of cases, suppliers have actually been involved for a hell of a lot less time than active patients have actually been consuming cannabinoids. One of the main issues this causes in our industry is with education. Hence why we started this show, trying to tackle that head on and trying to give you guys a bit more knowledge to be able to understand and make rational decisions within this market for yourself. But not only are we fighting a battle with social stigma and the historical demonization of cannabis, we're also fighting a battle amongst ourselves in defining what is right information and what is wrong information. I'm just going to come out and say it. Correct information, correct education, valid education, true education is extremely lacking in this space. I'm not going to criticize any of my compadres or anyone else in my industry, but we could all be doing a hell of a lot better. There are a lot of opinions, there's a lot of broad grouped assumptions, but there's not that much fact out there. More often than not, when something is fact, it's only circulated within a very small echo chamber of our community, and information doesn't really get out to the general public. So this is why I love Russ so much for providing us this platform to try and get the information out to you so you can make informed decisions, so you understand how wide and varied this market is. In today's world, unfortunately...
Another thing is... Sorry. Ollie, I just want to say something else, because I think one can talk the talk. You've got to walk the walk as well, to use a ridiculous New York phrase, but there we go. And I knew nothing about this 45 weeks ago, less than nothing. And since then, Ollie has helped me. It's helped me with my sleep. And then when I pulled my back, he sent me balms and other stuff. It worked.
But it's all about the right product.
It's
now,
the
if
right
I said to you,
I'm
go
gonna
and
get
buy
that, but what I wanna-
CBD, then you would not know where to stand.
No,
It's
if
all about
I went
understanding
if
the
I
right.
went into Boots the Chemist or Holland and Barrett, and I'm not knocking them in any way, I wouldn't know. And this is really interesting from just before you continue, because it's so great to have this endorsement from Sam Monroe. I'm totally behind the use of CBD oils, etc. The research is irrefutable. There is clear evidence of its benefits. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
We good?
Are we good? Sorry.
Yeah, so basically, as I was saying in the introduction, in today's world, information unfortunately costs a lot of money to share. And unfortunately, true information doesn't have the right financial backing behind it to be heard clearly in our society, in our culture. A lot of education is unfortunately provided by brands trying to sell products. And a lot of online content is written for SEO purposes, not for educational purposes. But this is what consumers read and learn. Sadly, in today's world, lies, promises, and misinformation sells products. Who wouldn't want to try a miracle? Who wouldn't want to buy a panacea? As someone who has been in this space for a while, it annoys me because the lies are actually based on misappropriated truths. So cannabinoids can often do a hell of a lot more when used correctly, and cannabinoids can do a hell of a lot more when understood properly. And what happens is it's very easy to say that, a balm helps Russ's back, but not every balm would have helped Russ's back. Some balms are made for psoriasis. Some balms are made for acne. Some balms are made for sheer vanity purposes or as lip plumpers. Those products are not what you need when you're in pain. And it's important to learn the differences in the marketplace. And that's what we're going to try and target over the next few weeks. With this in mind, I wanted to start talking with some of my fellow educators, get them in front of you, bloggers, vloggers, cannabis writers, influencers, and ambassadors who take a more active role than just product distribution. People who try to understand cannabis products, people who try to understand what products do, not from a commercial angle, but from a practical angle, from a scientific angle, from a functional, educational perspective. So today we're joined by journalist, cannabis author, and podcast host Mary Biles. She's writer of a book called The CBD Book. She's a host of her podcast is called Cannabis Voices, and she's an active supplier of true educational scientific content to the space. And I just wanted to kind of have that sort of conversation with you guys, because I really feel like a lot of active users out there still don't know what the right product is for them and what the difference is between cannabinoids. We've had a great education recently, but it's still important for us to refine it further. So I'm sorry about my little convoluted entry there, but if we can welcome on Mary Biles and we can start a conversation.
I'm just going to tap dance and do some Irish dancing and various things, as I am the entertainer of education.
You understand what I mean by that, don't you?
Jazz hands.
You don't write boring stuff. You don't write boring stuff. You write it, and like I said, you're not writing scientific research papers that the average individual reads 3 words of and falls asleep. Do you know what I mean? What you do is write educational content in a very enjoyable way, which makes it entertaining for someone to learn. I feel like that's what it's also what we try and do on this show. I call myself an educational entertainer too. It's that sort of, I try and entertain you into the point where you learn something. I felt like you were the same if I've embarrassed you.
Oh, no, not at all. No. And there's no point in making things dry. I mean, there's enough dry stuff out there. And I suppose I just try and make it something that I would enjoy reading myself and that I would understand myself. I'm not a scientist. I'm a lay person. And that's just what I do. So I'm glad it's entertaining. Hopefully it means that, my articles and my book are kind of easy, enjoyable read. So that's kind of job done for me.
It's very important because I feel like so much stuff is not digestible. Now, what happens is people want to read the facts, but if the facts are presented in such a way that they can't understand them, they want to read them, but they have no idea what they've just read. And that's the biggest problem in this industry. A lot of the research is coming from a scientific perspective, and then there aren't that many of us who try and dissect that to a point which is actually comprehensible. And I feel like that's something good we've done on this show, is we break things down to the point where they actually make sense, like you said, in layman's terms, because that's what we all are. I'm not a trained scientist. I didn't go to, I'm not a trained biochemist, so I have to understand the functional applications of what I'm doing.
But with respect, you've got a white lab coat.
Yeah.
In my eyes, that makes you a scientist.
And I've got a lab.
And you've got a lab.
Doing
but I'm
well,
not.
Ollie.
That's a
But I'm not a
scientist for you.
scientist. I'm not a scientist.
No, you got
because
you got the lab coat that qualifies you straight away.
well, straight away, that's it.
That's a fact.
You know, 50 grand at uni. You never needed to do that. You just bought yourself a lab coat, bought yourself a little lab.
coat for 11 quid.
So, Mary, let's talk about you. How did you get into this space? You know, because you haven't always been a cannabis writer. You know, you've been a writer about many other topics and other ideas. You know, a sharer of words across many different arenas. What made you enter this space? You know, what was the turning point, the green light story that attracted to you? Tell us a little bit about your entry into our world.
Yeah,
world combined.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a case of the kind of stars aligning, really. So my background. I worked for, I don't know, about 15 years, I suppose, in total in TV production. So while I kind of say Mary Biles, a journalist, I'm a writer. My background is TV. So, you know, sort of call me a journalist. But anyway, so I worked in TV. I retrained as a complementary therapist. So I understand the body. I'm interested, I suppose, in alternative therapies. And how, you know, the kind of connection between the mind and the body and the spirit. And I was also a teacher. I was an English teacher. So my kind of journey to cannabis, I was never like an ardent consumer, really. I lived in Spain, in Madrid, in my 20s, and was lucky enough to have a decent supply of Moroccan hash, and that was great. But on my return to the UK, where it's mostly weed, I'm one of those peeps who, you know, smokes weed, and I feel a bit paranoid, so I just didn't really smoke it, really. And so it was kind of 6 years ago, I guess. I was living in Seville in Spain, in Andalusia. I guess actually the first little kind of step, I had an ex-boyfriend who decided to grow cannabis because his friend had cancer, basically. And so he started growing loads of plants and stuff. And we watched the Rick Simpson video, and I remember watching it. Rick Simpson, you know, is a Canadian guy who basically cured, I think it was a skin cancer on his nose, and he came up with this big protocol and how to make cannabis oil, etc. So that was the first time I'd heard of a cannabinoid. And I remember, I was like, CBD, I don't know, I kind of understood more or less, but then didn't think any more about it. And then it was maybe a couple of years later, a very good friend of mine, while I was living in Spain, her mum was dying of pancreatic cancer. And she, you know, she'd had all the treatment. She was, you know, at the end of life stage. Morphine didn't agree with her, it didn't actually help with the pain. It completely kind of, you know, knocked her out. She couldn't enjoy the time that she had left with her family. She was nauseous. It was just, you know, hell layered upon hell, you know. She was living in Belgium. It wasn't exactly legal, but the doctor found some kind of loophole when the family asked if she could try cannabis. She was, you know, basically taking cannabis oil for the last 2 months of her life. It always makes me, I don't know, I feel emotional talking about it because, like, for me, kind of, sorry, I'm going to cry.
It's good. This is an emotional platform. We literally love making people cry here. It's like our thing.
I'm making myself
Russ,
cry. It's like, that's not so good. But no, because
like a proper show unless people are crying.
That's it. Listen, unless there are tears, the ABC of CBD is not making it. It's not a real show.
Absolute
not been a proper show.
Sobs.
Well, like for me, sort of dying with dignity is, I don't know, it's just something I've always felt very strongly about. And so seeing, like, you know, with my friend's mum, you know, she had cannabis oil, she wasn't in pain. She was a little bit stoned. She had an appetite. She could sleep properly. She could enjoy that time with her family. And she died with complete lucidity, you know, and that's, you know, there's not much more we can ask for in those kind of, you know, final dying weeks, moments, etc.
This is something we've spoken about a couple of times, Mary. It's been brought up a few times, you know, about like the end of life treatment, and you know, it's been brought up a lot about, you know, dying with dignity and creating your end of life plan. And you know, like Callie Blackwell brought it up about how she wanted her son to pass away with dignity, and we've heard it from several people. You know, they didn't want to pass away in a drug-induced stupor. And I think it's, you know, Russ has mentioned on many occasions, you know, the battle he had with the mother of his children, you know, during the you know, going through the same sort of thing. And I think it's a reoccurring thought that most people believe is they want their loved ones to pass in.
And
happiness.
I saw it, my mum, thankfully, when she passed, the pain wasn't terrible, but every time she had morphine, we lost her, because it just completely took away her lucidity. So going back to my friend Anna, I remember it very clearly. I was in my kitchen talking to her in Seville, and I was like, I'm so angry. This is, how can this be? I felt so outraged about the injustice that, and I didn't even know about all the other applications. This is purely the application of giving someone dignity in their dying weeks and months or, moments or whatever. So I just and I remember I promised I was going to do something about it. I didn't know what it was, but I was like, I'm going to do something about this. And then everything just kind of lined up. So 2 weeks later, there was a hemp fair in Seville. So I got myself, at that point I was writing, I had a blog about Seville. I was writing about other plant medicine, about ayahuasca and stuff like that. So I got myself a press pass and just kind of wobbled up, really, just to kind of do some research and find out a bit more, see if I could, write something about it. And this was back in 2016. So at this point, it was before the explosion of CBD in Europe and certainly the UK. There were a few companies, but not many. So at this fair, there were 2 CBD companies. And I chatted to both of them. One of them I got on really well with. It was the founder's mum was on the stand or whatever. And we just got on really well. And they're like, we're looking for a writer. What stuff have you written? And we had a chat. And then a few days later, I had an interview with the head of marketing. And then, literally in the space of 2 weeks between having that conversation when I was going to do something about this injustice, I was working for a, European CBD company called Endocannabinoid, basically, who were one of the kind of pioneers at the time. And that was it, really. So this was before there was draconian regulation in terms of what you could and you couldn't say. And so it wasn't, that I was kind of writing kind of mistruths that, that CBD cures everything. But I just got to write, pretty decent scientific articles and really
not mistruth, but it might have been a bit more broad. So CBD does this, CBD does that, as opposed to the actual discussion right now, where you would probably say specific doses of CBD or CBD broad spectrums with maybe an extra cannabinoids here or there. Or it's like, for example, I had this conversation with someone recently about a sleep product. Okay. And they were talking about how CBD is great for sleep. Now, CBD is great for sleep when you use it correctly, but they wanted to create like a 1.5%. And it wasn't, unless you're going to down half the bottle, it's not going to do anything. Sure. And it's like that sort of thing. It's about understanding. Now, let's say if you have anxiety, that 1.5% might actually be okay if you have like a low level, like a low level anxiety. But it's that sort of.
Or not, because everyone's endocannabinoid system is different. Everyone is different. So it's like, that's one of the beauty. And I think the lovely things about CBD and cannabis is that, it's an invitation to listen to your own body. It's like no one is going to tell you, well, they shouldn't tell you for various reasons, but they shouldn't, no one's going to tell you as they put on the labeling, take 2 to 3 drops a day. Whatever the dose, it's 2 to 3 drops a day or 3 times a day or whatever. Doesn't matter. That's just something. It's just something to put on the label. I mean, if you just follow the instructions of up titrating and getting to the dose where you start to feel some kind of effects, then hopefully if you've got a decent product,
personal, isn't it? And this is what
it is very personal. It's very personal.
Over the 45 weeks, we've mentioned this over again that cannabinoid usage is very personal. You can even see with the epileptic children, you have some of them who are taking 300 milligrams a day, and some of them who are taking 30.
Yeah,
they both have refractory epilepsy, but they both react differently, both similar sorts of ages, similar sorts of weights, but just the brains respond differently. And I feel like it's very important. One of the things I really want to drum into our listeners' brains is that, cannabis, cannabinoids in general are a very personal journey. And it's important for you to start looking personally and looking deeper at the product, because, there are specific things which will work for you and other products out there won't work for you. And bear in mind, a lot of the products on the market nowadays are not designed as functional products with a purpose. They're just designed to be a CBD generic product.
But the thing is, Ollie, that the trouble is, right? Like, I mean, I'd be interested to know, outside of the official classification of CBD and the kind of products that you're involved with, how would you classify CBD or CBD oil, hemp extracts, etc. Because for me, like CBD, it's not just CBD. It's, you know, I'm a big proponent of full extract of full spectrum products and it, you know, the entourage effect, etc. So just talking about CBD for me is kind of talking about the wrong thing. But
see, like, I have to disagree with you, because like everything's got its purpose. Okay, so every cannabinoid's got its purpose, every cannabinoid's got its place in this world. Now let's say, for example, you've got a 6-month-old baby who suffers with extreme eczema. Okay, the chances are THC would help him. I can't find one mother of a 6-month-old baby who's going to start lathering her baby up with THC. It's just not the smart thing to do. Okay, now that's just topical. If you start going ingestible, then it goes even deeper. I always say that CBD is what I like to call the entry-level cannabinoid. Okay, it's the first cannabinoid that anyone should try for any reason. Now, CBD and this whole, what's it called, homeopathy bag of other herbs work really well together. So like we use like terpenes a lot, and we also use herbs a lot, you know. So I'll create uplifting CBD products, backing them off with moringa and echinacea, and I can make subduing CBD products, backing them off with valerian root and California poppy.
If we go back to like how this movement started, right? So going back to like 2015, 14 or whatever, what were people taking? I mean, I know, you know, there weren't lab tests, blah, blah.
1,000,000% people were using a broad spectrum
were getting these
product.
amazing, broad/full spectrum, right? So they would have had they would have trace elements.
There would have been trace elements of THC and
products
everything
that people were having these jaw-dropping effects with.
Not true. So the first story we ever heard was a story of Charlotte Fiji.
Sure.
Okay, Charlotte Fiji didn't use a broad spectrum.
Do you want
and little things like that?
For those of us who don't know who that is, can you explain?
Charlotte Fiji was a girl based in Colorado. She had a severe epilepsy, and she used the first product ever formulated for her was an isolate. Now, I'm not saying Charlotte's Web was an isolate.
I don't think it was, you know, that wasn't.
Okay, so
it was not an isolate.
No, the first product formulated for Charlotte was an isolate. Charlotte's Web, the product created by the Stanley brothers, wasn't.
I've done a podcast with the doctor who prescribed like the treatment for Charlotte Figi.
So the first person,
they had what was the hippies' disappointment,
which was an ACDC. Which
I don't know whether it's ACDC, but it had it was no one would smoke it because they couldn't get high, basically.
Also, so you know that the person who designed the first product for Charlotte Figi was on our show. We had him on. It's a guy called Chris Stubbs. And he works for Jen Kenner. And now what happens is it's a process. I'm not saying it's the first or the only product she ever took, but it was an isolate. And then also, if you look at so much of the other research out there, it was all isolates, because that was the first form of CBD you could get without having a large proportion of THC, which parents would actually give to their epileptic children.
Right, but the clinical research is very different to what patients or consumers were taking when they were buying their little 10 mil bottle of hemp extract or CBD or whatever.
Of course.
So which was, and it was these products that have created the groundswell that is now the CBD industry.
Yes and no. See, this is what I call about misinformation, because what happens is you have a whole bunch of athletes who are using a product, they're not using a broad spectrum. And then you have a whole bunch of advocates who are using a broad spectrum. Then you have patients from across the board, all of them are using different products. Now, everyone's talking about it like it's the same thing, and everyone talks about it like it's a broad spectrum, but in reality, no one has any idea. And that's the actual truth right there. The truth is that no one was testing their products. So no one actually has any clue. What happens is you've got Homie on one side who's made an RSO, and Homie on the other side who's made an RSO from two completely different plants, grown in completely different ways, extracted in completely different ways, but yet they're both miracle cures, but they're both different. So that's where I believe isolates have a place, because they give a foundational understanding of, yes, this cannabinoid does something, or no, it does nothing. Yes, I am completely of favor that a broad spectrum, full spectrum blend of all cannabinoids working together is better. But I also believe in accuracy, and I also believe in consistency. I also believe in a regular product for a consumer which they can rely on. And a full plant extract, unfortunately, I wish it was, is never an exact science. So 1 week it's one thing, 1 week it's something else. Hence why so many of the epileptic children now are having problems with their medication, because every 3 months it changes.
But Ollie, a lot of children with intractable epilepsy are on Epidiolex, are having problems with Epidiolex, and that's
Epidiolex
standardized.
is terrible.
But it's an isolate, right?
Yeah,
and isn't that what we're talking about? But
true. But I'm saying Epidiolex is terrible. I'm not saying that all epileptic children should be taking isolates. I'm saying that there's a place for every product in this marketplace. I believe every patient should take the product that works for them. However, we don't live in a world right now where I can take an analysis of your blood, run it through a system, come out with a spread of cannabinoids, which is perfect for your balance, recreate your product using isolates to be able to mathematically build up your product from scratch, perfect for you. We don't live in a world that does that. Now, it's impossible for me to go and get a broad spectrum and tamper with it to make it right for you. However, if I have isolated cannabinoids across the board, isolated terpenes, isolated lipids and fats, I can reconstruct a mathematical equation. And that mathematical equation, which is made based on your analysis, will be perfect for you every single time. And that is the place for isolates in this world. It's so much broader. So it's how valuable is the number one? The number one is valuable when you can create an equation which only uses the number one. Do you understand what I mean?
I understand. I mean, I'm not. So, for example, when I was living in Spain, I was very lucky to be able to speak to some of the research scientists, molecular biologists at the Madrid University. So they've done a lot of the groundbreaking research into cannabinoids and cancer, basically. Interestingly, I think in contrast to the majority of the scientists that I speak to, they are still kind of proponents of, they're fighting for access to the plant as a whole. But when Christina Sanchez, who's done some amazing work, she says, I'm a molecular biologist. I have to break things down. I can't just study the plant. It's so complex, we're never going to work out which bit does which. So we have to break it down into the individual cannabinoids and study them, of course, and it's true. Most of for example, for anxiety, when there's articles written about CBD for anxiety, for often SEO blogs, anyone who's not in the marketing industry, SEO is search engine optimization. So basically, it means that when someone types in, the dream for a CBD company is when someone types in CBD for anxiety, or will CBD help with my anxiety, their company comes up top in the rankings, basically. And there's all sorts of dark magic and tricks and stuff that you can do to make that happen. But so the kind of classic thing for kind of SEO's CBD for anxiety article is to kind of talk about some preliminary studies that have been done on social anxiety, but they're using really, really, really high doses of CBD isolate, like, I don't know, really, really high, 200, 300, 400 milligrams, which is, if someone was kind of, taking their average bottle of CBD, that would be like kind of necking, the whole bottle. So it's not kind of like comparing like with like, so that's why, that, and I do try and explain that, and it's like, I think everyone, we all have an endocannabinoid system, and I'm sure also this kind of states of our other receptors are all kind of, different, sort of different states of tone, etc. So, you do really just have to, starting off getting a decent product, and then just, trying it out gradually. It's always really helpful to have like a journal or something, so you can just kind of notice how the effects are. Unfortunately, I know, Ollie, I saw the promotion for the brand, when you had the black, slightly spooky black gloves on. I found that a bit sort of disconcerting. But anyway, affordable CBD oil.
It's hygiene.
It's spooky.
What color would have worked? Mary, what color would have worked for you and been less spooky?
I'm getting skeleton gloves. That's what I'm going to get. Glow in the dark skeleton gloves if they're not spookier.
Let me just read this from Edinburgh, from one of our viewer listeners, Veronica Curran. And I think this goes to the very heart of this series. Purple Punch is definitely helping arthritis, chronic pain, and sleep. I missed this, and my sleep was very broken last night with pain levels high tonight. I'm very sorry to hear that, Veronica. We wish you well. I will take both. Still, on a learning curve. After 20 plus years of opioids, no way I would go back.
See, for her, when she needs the analgesic, it's a different conversation. Do you know what I mean? She needs a dominant broad spectrum or full spectrum with a THC dominance. She needs that 1,000,000%. So I'm not like it's a very strange, and I am one of these people who really does believe, Mary, that everyone deserves the right product for them. And I'm one of these guys who prays to God that one day the system enables that to happen. That's where I believe. I don't really have a stance. I just want you to get what's right for you. I don't want you to take what I think is right for you. That's why I always say cannabis is personal. I don't say cannabis is what Ollie says. I say cannabis is personal. It's about you. So that's where my logic comes from. But I'm a very strong supporter of isolates just for the fact that you can, they're building blocks. Do you know what I mean? It's the whole
for the purposes of the discussion and for those of us who are not as in-depth.
Yeah, sorry guys, that was intense.
You are.
The audience, I'm so sorry, but we had my first
I haven't been like that since I was at the LSE taking notes in lectures. Anywho, let's just use Veronica because she's so supportive of the station and the show. She's a terrific person. We've never met, but she's been so supportive. Let's just say that Veronica came to you guys and said, I've got awful arthritis. I can't sleep. I'm in terrible pain. What would you do? From what you're saying, would you be, because I got a bit lost there, to be honest with you. Putting it mildly.
We were geeking out, sorry.
I got the word Mary and I got the word Ollie after that. I was drowning. Would you be in agreement? I'm just using Veronica, and I know she won't mind, as an example. So she comes to you, she's presented the symptoms. Are you seeing from the same hymn sheet, or are you on different views here? What's the story?
I think that what we have to kind of point out first of all, and this is why I asked Ollie the question, how do you classify you without, if we're in this world where it wasn't classified yet, how would you classify CBD products? Because right now they're classified as a food supplement, right? Nutritional supplements. And so how many other nutritional supplements would we be talking about as for arthritis,
They're classified as a food supplement because the government doesn't know how else to classify them.
Exactly.
That's not my analysis. I see CBD as a medicine. I really do. I see it as a medicine. I see it as having extremely powerful, potent medicinal values. But then I also see turmeric as a medicine. I see honey as a medicine in the right moment, and I see lemons as a medicine too in appropriate application.
And remembering was it Hippocrates who said, "Let food be thy medicine." So with that as well, it's like it could be and I think there's been a kind of an appropriation of the word or misappropriation. I don't know if that's right of the word medicine. Like now it can only be pharmaceutical. But anyway, that's kind of an aside. I mean, it's I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going. I can't give Veronica medical advice. That I wouldn't be appropriate. Fine.
So I actually wrote something similar to this. Okay, so it's actually kind of, and I didn't say this in my introduction. So what I believe, all right. So cannabinoids can more often than not make miracles real. Okay, but they need to be used and applied properly. It's not the well of life, but when used properly, water can keep you alive. So it's that same logic. All right. So cannabinoids are not the be all and end all, but when used properly, they can be. Do you understand what I mean? And cannabinoids, and that's where I stand. That's my standpoint. It's nice to be questioned on my own show. That's my standpoint. That's where I feel. That's where I fit. And it's important because it's, like I said, I really am pro the product working, and I'm very much personal because I know, let's say with Russ, even in a world where THC was legal and Russ's back was screwed up, he wouldn't want a THC-based product. It wouldn't affect his lifestyle. So yes, he needs THC, but you can't have it. So therefore, what do? We have to find a way to work with cannabinoids, which he can use. Cannabinoids which do respond well with his body. Now, ideal world, Russ should be taking THC. But it doesn't work that way because the patient doesn't always want to take what the prescriber wants to give them. So it's about finding the right product which has a function.
They do if they go to the doctor, right? Normally, if you go to the doctor, you kind of take what you're given.
Doctor's given me morphine before, and I've said no.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I've hurt myself before, and the doctors have given me meds, and I've been like,
doctor
nah.
with this. By the way, we're just saying hi to Eve Phantom. Crazy name, crazy gal. Veronica Curran is saying B12 injection, D3 full strength. And then above this, Veronica, for both of you, I think you can see it on your screen. These are her symptoms. Holy moly. Veronica, I don't know how you have the strength to listen to the shows as wonderfully supportively as you do. Arthritis, osteoporosis. I'm mispronouncing all of this. Help me with the next one, because Mary, you got a brain like a planet.
Fibromyalgia.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. And the next two I can definitely do: anxiety, depression. So, wow.
Do you know what's interesting with Veronica? And I'm going to segue into this because she's got a cluster of symptoms. I'm not a doctor, I reiterate again, but she's got a cluster of symptoms, apart from possibly the kind of related to osteoarthritis, that this cluster of anxiety and depression, was there fibromyalgia there as well? I'm not sure.
Yep,
but
there was.
yeah.
Yes.
So,
or mental.
Yeah, but also this cluster that are often related to endocannabinoid deficiency. So this is one of the reasons. So endocannabinoids, we have, I'm sure it's been spoken about in the show before. We have this system in our body where we have receptors in our brain and central nervous system, a certain class of endocannabinoid receptors, and then other class of endocannabinoid receptors in our kind of peripheral nervous system and our immune system and organs and stuff like that. And we have cannabis-like chemicals which are similar to neurotransmitters that kind of basically fit into these receptors, like kind of lock and key. And there are other kind of bits and bobs which, you know, I will sort of won't go into. But what they've realized about this system is that it's what they call a master regulator. So it's kind of, if you imagine like you've got a kind of conductor of an orchestra who's just keeping all the sections of the orchestra just playing at the right volume and speed and all the rest of it. And there's a line of research with a gentleman called Dr. Ethan Russo, who with conditions such as fibromyalgia, IBS, migraines, that their research suggests that there can be an endocannabinoid deficiency. So that kind of dialing up and down isn't happening properly. And often there's also chronic fatigue and also kind of depression and anxiety that goes alongside with that. What's really interesting is that the conditions where it's thought there could be some endocannabinoid deficiency are the ones that respond quite favorably to cannabinoids and CBD, for example. Now, CBD isn't kind of, it doesn't fit in. This is often what's kind of written about, which I in a previous conversation with Ollie, I was like, oh, it really annoys me with content when they get things wrong. So you might read that, oh, CBD fits into, often they think it doesn't fit into the CB1, which is fine, which is the one in the brain, but therefore it must fit into the CB2, which is the one in your kind of immune system and stuff. It doesn't bind with the receptors, but it kind of indirectly means there's more natural. Yeah, but there's more natural. Well, as I understand, well, anyway, without going into the boring science, it kind of
basically the best way of saying it is every factory has a foreman to make sure the factory runs smoothly. CBD is the foreman of the factory.
Okay.
That's the best way of saying it. And what happens is every receptor has its job, and the whole point of CBD is to modulate and regulate said receptor to almost make sure it functions at optimum capability. Hence why CBD enables your body to absorb so many other compounds at such an excessive rate, enabling just the body to function and homeostasis to run smoother. So it's like, I completely agree with you. Based on what our friend up north was saying, I'm so sorry you're going through the pain you're going through. That's basically it. Just to cut in, it sucks. It really sucks.
Here's a question for you both. It's from Dave Sleet, who heads up ANA. And it's this. Greetings,
what's up, Dave?
And greetings to you, Dave. Is there scope for grouping the people's biological ranges?
So what they've started talking about this genetic screening. So I've got a few friends based in Holland and I've got a few friends based in California, and they're both talking about genetic screening in order to kind of map out what you're missing. And it's something new which people are doing, and they found a way of correlating it to the cannabis industry as well as other natural herbs and components out there, other natural compounds. And I think it's the future. I think it's the future where they'll be able to analyze you and tell you what you're missing, and then we'll be able to kind of construct things out. I don't know if that's the same thing as grouping people into biological ranges, but it's a little bit more of a personal way of kind of grouping people into what they actually need and analyzing them for what they actually need, because it's quite hard.
I think Dave's point is obviously what you're both centering on quite a lot this evening is this total, the requirement for total bespoke. You know, you're like Savile Row tailors. You can't go to M&S and buy.
It's the dream, isn't it? It's the dream to have a Savile rotator where you walk in, hi, I'm falling to pieces. Can you put me back together again?
That's kind of it. But it'd be perfect. I mean, the analogies is perfect for you. That's
you have anxiety.
And Dave's point is very, very good. Veronica back in Edinburgh saying you need to keep on top of mood forced for deficiency and surprise those bloods were never, as they say, fine. Oh, you're losing me here a little bit. It's migraine. Yes, didn't want to put it all out there. Russ, I'm good. I think you're damn brave. That's what you are.
You're a soldier.
You're a soldier. You're doing.
So
great.
I've got 15 minutes left. I want to ask Mary a question that I actually wanted to ask her. Okay, I want to get back on track.
I've got a question for Mary first. Mary,
have you go first, then. I'll sit back. I'll chill.
So freaking moody. Listen, Mary, have you enjoyed this experience, or has it been? Is it what you wanted?
I had no expectations.
Okay, that's good. I go through life like that. I go through life like that. So
yeah, I
go
go with
whatever
the flow.
comes along is a bonus, really. You know what I mean?
I like. You know, it's good to be animated. I find.
I
think
challenge.
What's fascinating.
I kind of like it. I like
what's
the talk.
fascinating is you are both really steeped in knowledge in what you're doing. You know every little nut and bolt and screw.
She actually knows enough to write a book. That's pretty mental, right?
No, you do.
The book!
If you take your hand off the title, it'll be even better. Hold it up to the camera. There we are. You can't take the boy out of advertising.
Everyone buy her book.
It's called Catchily, and this took ages for her to come up with the CBD book.
Oh, it's the publisher, actually. That right. I can. Yeah, they can. No. Yeah,
it's good. It's got a little leaf on the front, and that's great. Yeah. Is it on Amazon and everything like that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. And if you don't like Amazon, like all the other places as well,
what's not to love? They turn up on your doorstep with the thing you want.
But what I was going to say is, like, I don't. Speaking personally, I'm sure Ollie would say the same thing. I don't know everything. Because there's just always, it's just like this, because also things are being discovered all the time.
Sure.
We're babies. Like the first thing I said is, look, most people in this industry have either been around using or around supplying for around the same amount of time. Like in terms of medical, clinical application of cannabis, you've got 20 years. That's all you've got globally is 20 years. In terms of using cannabis, we've been using it for several thousand years. But in reality, in terms of Western knowledge and in terms of us as a modern day world, accepting cannabis as a medicine, as a food supplement, not as a drug, is brand new. And let's say even just today, they've just legalized recreational use in recreational recreational creation. Like you can grow growing? 6 plants. Yeah, growing in grow Italy.
Your own. Oh,
in Italy. In Italy, they've literally today they've just legalized. You can grow 6 plants. However, do you want to know something interesting? If you get caught supplying, prison sentences have gone up. So it used to be 5 years in jail for supply. Now it's 10 years in jail for supply. So the whole idea is you're allowed to grow it, you're allowed to smoke it, you're legally allowed to own it. But if you're caught selling it, you'll spend double the amount of time in prison as everyone else. So it's still a world where they're giving us everything, but taking away so much. We don't really know. Most of the information, when it does get released, is in such thick scientific words that the average individual can't comprehend it. And even people like me and Mary probably struggle to know what the hell they're talking about. It gets hard. And you've got incredible brains out there like the Raphael Mechoulems and the Dedi Me'iris who have created incredible papers over the last 30 years. But even some of those are still not even kind of made it to the top of the pile yet. Even some of those are still not even being recognized. Bear in mind, CBD and THC was discovered in the 80s. It then got started being used in the 90s, and in the early 2020s is when we kind of have a green revolution. It's 35 years after the fact. So, I mean, if that put things into perspective, we're very slow to learn in the UK. And I know I've got at least 35, 40 years left of life. I'm going to be learning about cannabis for the next 40 years. Every single day they've just discovered a new cannabinoid THCP.
Very bad news for you. I won't be here
You will
But-
be here, Russ. Russ,
40 years time.
with the
Trust
medical advancements in cannabis,
Trust
will
me,
keep you
bloody
alive
well, I
forever.
don't want to be here in 40 years time, thank you. I think the end for me was ABBA as avatars. Anyway, we've only got like
10 minutes left.
11 minutes left. So
Okay.
Tell us about
please
your
ask.
book. Tell us about your book.
Yes,
Shoot.
tell us all
Oh,
about the
shut
book.
up.
That's
Go.
a great. Yes.
What can I say, really? I mean, it's. I suppose I think of it as being a roadmap for anybody who has thought, oh, I'd like to try CBD, and then Googles it, and then comes up with thousands of different companies and brands and products and flavors and this and that, all claiming to be the best and blah 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 blah. So that's it, really. I mean, I kind of it's a mixture of really practical tips about, getting your kind of little grubby paws on what hopefully would be a decent product. I kind of go into what is the current research. Probably in the year since it was published last year, I wrote it like a year and a half ago. So there'll probably be some more research papers to add to it now. And certainly also with the kind of landscape in the UK of what you can and can't buy, that's changed since
With
I
novel
published
food
a
and
book.
everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was
Novel
kind of
foods
it was
everything.
sort of just brewing, or it hadn't been kind of anyway. So that and then so I kind of explain the different products, and then possibly my favorite section is the case study. So I didn't have to kind of reach out too far really in my network to end up speaking to some extraordinary people, because that's the thing with CBD. When it works, it really works. When it works, it really works. And it can be, incredibly transformative for a whole host. And that's why it's so bonkers. And that's why it's so hard to classify. Because on the one hand, you've got a wellness market when people are taking it like the kind of latest nutritional craze. And on the other hand, you've got kids with epilepsy. And I'm not even talking about, they may be taking something that someone's just taking for their anxiety. I'm not, I'm an anxiety sufferer as such. I'm not putting down anxiety. Or in the book, there was a woman who had some kind of mysterious like brain inflammation, which she almost died, and was on, kind of stuck on really, really high doses of steroids, which were making every time she tried to come off them, she was like really, really ill. And thanks to CBD, she could gradually wean herself off steroids. And interestingly, there is some really fascinating research which was looking at CBD as a steroid-sparing treatment, actually. And the same team have been doing research into CBD for COVID because CBD is anti-inflammatory and does help to reduce this kind of cytokine storm. So it's interesting, the sort of links between the steroids, which are also being used actually for COVID.
Russ,
What was that?
a cytokine storm is
thank you. You're getting psychic.
A cytokine storm is an overfunction of the immune system, which produces antibodies, which end up killing the host.
It's a kind of hyper-inflammatory state. So this is kind of what precedes in the patients with, the really terrible COVID, when their organs start to kind of, stop working. And unfortunately, it doesn't end well. So that's it really. And from the case studies, this is sort of what's been the inspiration for the podcast, because, when I did the case studies, as a writer, I kind of recorded the interviews, etc. And these are such, I don't know, I was listening back to them, and they're, just amazing stories that just, sort of gives you goosebumps, like Vera Toomey and just amazing. She's an Irish mother of a little girl with epilepsy, different people. And I just thought they deserve to have their platform. People should hear their voices, not me cutting and pasting and shoving it in a book. So I kind of like woke up in the middle of the night with like, Cannabis Voices. It's going to be called Cannabis Voices. And so that's what it's called.
It's very good what you guys have done, and share it,
it's me. Well, and my guests.
And your guests, exactly. Listen, it's never us. It's just the guests. Like me and Russ said, without the guests, it's just me and Russ taking the piss out of each other, and it's no matter how funny that is. There's
that's
no
an
education
entertaining
there.
hour there on its own. To be honest,
if you
with
say
you.
So.
Let's dash
It's
across.
hard,
I do say so, Mary J. Biles. Right, let's dash across to Spain. Yippee, says Chrissy Richards. You're back. Hello, kiss, kiss. Hello to you, Chrissy. Glad you could join.
I'm very jealous. She's in Spain. I'd like to know where in Spain she is.
She lives in Spain.
Chrissy, where do you live in Spain?
In the middle, on a farm, and she's sent me pictures in the past because it's a proper farm in the middle of nowhere. I always say she must say to her other half.
I'd love to know which province. Chrissy, is it Andalusia? I was living near Seville.
province of Tesco's, apparently. I don't know, but it's the middle. I've never seen anything so deserted. I think she says to Mike, her other half, I'm just going to get some milk. See you in a week. Anyway, there we are. I really enjoyed having you on. You are
She's
feisty.
great. She's great.
Feisty, which is always terrific.
Do you understand why I call her like an educational entertainer now? You understand that?
You call her whatever she wants you to call her. Otherwise, you're getting in for a slap. The thing about it is, what I was trying to say about you two, and I know you weren't getting my point, is what's great for me, simply as an arbiter here, is your passion. Is your passion for the subject. You know, anything can be understood and embraced if you communicate it with passion, and it's great. You know, I stand back on the sidelines and just watch this. Well, here we go. Chrissy Richards from Spain again. We go to the market on Wednesday. Good to know. There is a woman selling CBD. Or you mentioned that before. Here we go. What do I look for?
Salar. Sorry.
What do I look for? And she lives in Andalusia, Salar, near Granada. Which was TV
I would say, just because I'm kind of quite au fait with the farmers markets in Andalusia, and if it's like a kind of artisan, so a kind of handmade product, you wouldn't necessarily know what you're getting. So, and that doesn't mean that necessarily they're bad. And actually, I would love to have an artisan product that's grown from organic hemp and love and care, grown under the sun, etc., etc. But I would just ask, a few questions about how, a few more questions. Has
it been tested? Does it have a COA?
I'm sure.
No, it probably won't. But then, if it has been tested, how many different batches have they tested? So what's their consistency like?
Yeah, I mean, I would want to know how it's been extracted.
To a woman who can say 2 beers, please, and some olives.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, you just want to. I mean, at that, if it's artisan, I'd want to know how it was made. Did she cook it up in a kitchen, or was it, was there some kind of like proper extraction process? And it's the sort of thing it might not even contain CBD, or maybe it will. I don't know, but it would be a bit of a
tricky one.
Taking a chance on it, really, I would say. But I'm almost jealous. Wish I was there in the farmers market right now.
I'd like to be anywhere right now after the last 19 months. God almighty.
Just to get out of this country would be incredible.
Gulag archipelagos, okay, which would be so great.
So, Mary, what are your thoughts for the future? You've taken over the writing world. You've taken over the podcasting world. Like, what's next? You're going to start a company? You're going to go to war with me? Let's do something fun. No, seriously. What's the aim for the cannabis market? Do you reckon you're here long term? Are you passing through?
I'm a funny one. I do things for about 5 or 6 years, and then I get bored, and then I do something else. I've got too much knowledge. It'd be a deep shame if I just kind of just decided to do something else. But I kind of do. I suppose potentially I'm looking to be involved in some way that's not just my worth is not my writing. I get a bit tired of okay, this is what you do. You write. So I've started doing a bit of consultancy work because I think the kind of the messaging that some companies have is frankly dangerous and unethical. So when I'm most happy is when I'm having direct contact with patients, to be honest. So I'm not sure. I mean,
don't leave the industry. Don't leave the industry. As in, I've spoken to a lot of people, Mary. I've spoken to a lot of people. You think right, and that's the main thing. Especially because you're not. From your own account, you're not a grass-rooted lady. You're not. If I only smoked a bit.
I'm like some middle-aged, middle-class woman who accidentally ended up in this world. Basically,
but to be honest with you, you can represent the interests of people who share the same. Who share the same socioeconomic background as you.
Okay.
And it's important. It's important for this market to be fairly representative of the population.
But I don't think I'm just representing. I mean, that's the thing, to be honest, what I've always done in whatever I've done, be it working in TV or teaching or in complementary therapies, people are people. I'm not defined by being a middle-class, middle-aged lady. It's and I think that's...
I didn't say that. You said that.
No, you said
you just defined yourself like
that. No, I'm happy being that. But you were like, then you can you're like those other middle-class ladies. Yes, go on.
Mary, before you go, because everyone, Chrissy Richards from Spain, she's a fun one, very cheering.
I I try.
think
He
that's
is
the
awesome,
deciding
right?
factor.
Give her a
She's-
show.
she's
Give her a
awesome.
radio
Yes,
show.
What
Give
did
everyone
you?
one. No,
What
seriously,
did
give her a
you?
show.
What did? Yeah, right. What did you do in television before you go?
Yeah, I
Everyone
was.
wants
I
to
mean,
know,
I kind of
know
worked my way up the greasy pole from being a runner to sort of producing, directing in kind of factual, like mostly low budget. If I'm honest, I ended up liking making programs about sex and the fetish scene. That was my greatest TV moment. But
that's where
but
we
yeah,
know each other from. I knew you looked familiar. It's been.
How would I know? You had a gimp suit on.
Wow. And that's the end of the show,
And there
everybody.
we go, ladies and
Welcome to the
gentlemen.
ABC of CBD, where
This is
Mary
the
will not be
ABC where we
invited
get
back.
smacked in the gob every day. Ollie Mammon, you freaking legend. It's so lovely to have you back.
It's been fun to
Mary,
have. What a
you've
great episode to come back to, man. That was
Mary,
fun as
you
hell.
have
What a
been-
great hour.
To use Ollie's phrase, you've been awesome. I would just say you've been jolly good,
I
great
try.
value, and very, very entertaining and informative too. We'll be back
Just
same time
how-
next week. Until then, you take care.